It's Spoilerin time, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Tom Merritt. Today on Spoilerin time, we're going to spoil The Shield, episodes 4 and 5 of season 6. Ex Machina, about a Machina who is no longer a Machina, or possibly something else. Brian will tell us. And Orange is the New Black, episodes 2 and 3, maybe part of 4. But let's start with introducing Brian Brushwood, safely back from France.
Not quite back. I'm in a closet in Georgia, still at a family reunion where I'm about to go downstairs and admonish all of my extended family for not watching the right movies, which is why Night Attack is on track to be in last place in this summer's movie draft.
The Cordkillers, almost said NSFW show, almost got the belt. Night Attack Summer Movie Draft has DTNS in last place. And let me tell you, Brian Brushwood, this entire time, everyone's been making fun of me for having a realistic outlook on the fact that things could go wrong, even though we have 7 movies. I'm not denying that we put ourselves in good place, but everyone's like, oh, it's locked down. We're going to have to change the rules, break up DTNS. Here we are with Ted 2 making $33 million. Not good. Not what we wanted to see.
Well, first of all, I wouldn't say it's bad. Certainly, if it were any other, if it weren't a sequel,
we needed
a $30 million opening weekend is pretty huge, right? But we had high expectations for Ted.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, it's not the lock that everyone thought because we only got $33 million out of Ted 2, plus Jurassic World.
Holy cow.
$500 freaking million. And I know Cordkillers has Minions coming up, so they are definitely going to pass Amtrekker, and they could easily get up to $800-900 million.
Yeah, man. I'm looking at this now. Certainly Jurassic Park or Jurassic World has another $60 to $80 million left in its tank, so they're definitely going to be up past $600 million. Minions definitely has $200 million in the tank, so I'm going to say almost guaranteed it'll be $800 million, possibly $900 million, and that is game-winning territory. And you're looking at Ant-Man, Vacation, Mission Impossible, and Fantastic Four. There's 4 movies. If all 4 of those do $170 million each, you could still lose, which is amazing.
Yeah, well, don't forget to have Vacation. Did you say that? Or Selfless?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it in there.
Or Selfless. You didn't mention Selfless. That one could make 10
Oh, no, that's right. No, I skipped Selfless because nobody's going to watch Selfless.
Because it's a rounding error? Is that why you skipped it?
It's going to make Selfless will make $20 in a taco, and that's it.
I paid a taco for it, so that'll be fine. I'll make an extra $20. Yeah, so this is what I love about the movie draft is every year we go in thinking, oh, well, this is the lock team for whatever reason, and it's always in doubt and often ends up not being that team. You just can't tell. Anything can happen any given Sunday.
Yeah, Saturday, man, it's remarkable. There's some kind of weird cosmic balance that always surprises us, and as a matter of fact, that's what I love about watching the chat realm of players. Because in this case, look at this. As always seems to happen, by the time we get to the end, I don't think we've ever had a multi-tied winner for first place. Right now, we have a single individual in first place spending $97 total on Furious 7, Pitch Perfect 2, and Jurassic World. Our first chat round player to get over $1 billion, and sitting alone at the top of the throne, it's Am Mace, AMMACE. Congratulations so far.
3 movies. And I think that would be even more movie draft-like if everyone came in saying, Team DTNS is going to win. They got 7 movies. We need to really rethink how we allow that strategy to work. That's unfair. And then a team that has 3 movies could win it.
But they were the right 3. They were all 3 that overperformed expectations. I mean, that's the other thing. Like Night Attack, I'm coming to grips with the fact that barring Trainwreck Fever sweeping the nation, Team Night Attack's going to come in dead last this year. And it's looking at it on paper, Inside Out, Tomorrowland, should have made good money.
Yeah, Inside Out did all right, 185, but Tomorrowland is where you really fell.
Oof, yeah, no, that crushed us. As a matter of fact, I think we had talked about it. It was estimated that Tomorrowland was going to lose like $200 million for the company. It was insane.
Tomorrowland and is at 90 million. That's it.
Okay, look, I'm not rubbing salt in your wounds, Merritt.
You can, because I wasn't meaning to rub salt in your wound, but I get that. I was just stunned. I expected to see a 100. I hadn't actually looked directly at it.
You know.
Wow.
What can we do? Boiled. That's all we can say. Shall we move on and start spoiling other
hold
stuff?
on. We always like to tease the next movies. And just so people know, coming out this weekend, July 4th weekend here in the United States. Well, it's actually July 4th weekend everywhere. But we have a holiday on July 4th. So coming out July 1st, Magic Mike Double Extra Large, guys from Queens, with their second to last movie. And guys from Queens now in third place behind Cordkillers. And then Frog Pants Terminator Genesis. That is their second to last movie. And they are in fourth place.
Yeah, by the way, Cordkillers looks like they're going to run away with the Best Buy. Well, I don't know. You might have the Best Buy for some of the dirt cheap prices you paid for
later
like
on,
and such.
yeah. But they got $11 million per dollar spent on Jurassic World. That's pretty damn good.
It's amazing.
All right, let's talk about Orange is the New Black.
Yeah, man. So I'm not going to lie. Fourth episode of Orange is the New Black. I'll keep plowing through those until I start to get sleepy. So I ended up only getting halfway through. But the arcs that we had gotten through, I think the last significant event that I had seen was what's the name of my favorite character on this show? The former heroin junkie who's an unabashed lesbian who's always in a sex race with Boo.
Yeah, her.
But isn't that weird?
Suzanne?
But she's
No, Suzanne is Crazy Eyes.
People are saying Nikki.
Nikki?
Yeah,
Nikki.
That
sure.
sounds right. That sounds right. Yeah, man. I loving it. I will say, okay, real quick, to our main character's arc. It's weird to me that they've just totally dropped the husband, Piper's husband, or betrothed, or whatever.
Her fiance.
He's just gone out of it now, right?
Yeah.
What's that?
Ex-fiance.
Ex-fiance, yeah. So I guess he's just out of it. So now it's all about the drama of Piper and Alex. It did get interesting. I was afraid they were going to drag out the Will Piper confess to Alex that it's her fault that Alex is back in jail. But they finally got to it, and they did kind of turn it into this weird like sex game for him, which to be honest, I was more relieved that they weren't going to try to have us hanging on edge for that than anything else. I did find it a little bit weird. I liked that they did it, that they had Boo be very surprising, dropping Freakonomics references and talking about some counterintuitive economic theory regarding Roe versus Wade. I don't know that it delivered, that it stuck the landing on there. The whole thing with Nikki and the betrayal with the weed smoking corrections officer, I thought was good. If a little obvious in seeing it coming. But I'll tell you what I'm loving is Daya and Peg Leg corrections officer. I should really learn the names of the characters of the show. But him realizing what family he's buying into and sitting down to dinner at a place where a relative will solve a kid's refusal to eat some food by pulling a gun on him and holding it to his head. Bennett, yeah, thank you very much, Nashcom. I think Bennett's journey is the most interesting to me out of the entire show so far.
Yeah, I am farther ahead from you, so I have to be careful how I comment on these story arcs because I got to remember which ones have played out and which ones haven't. You're currently in the middle of watching the one that's got Boo's backstory. Is that right?
Oh no, I you know what? Maybe I'm overestimating. I don't remember that. Again, I probably fell asleep. I got sleepy at that point. I think the last big thing I saw was Nikki getting pulled and taken to, I guess, SHU for they're pinning the whole.
Okay, that's episode 3. She
her.
Gets sent, and then episode 4 is they deal with her the fact that she got sent to SHU.
Okay, got it. So that's where I'm at right now. Oh shoot, there was something else I was gonna say. Oh, also brewing is the fact that it looks like the camp is closing, as they put it, which is fascinating because it puts me in the position of humanizing all of the corrections officers in a way that hadn't before. And I do think it's an interesting ethical decision about whether or not this baby will have a better life if she grows up in the wealthy family that delivered the abomination that is porn stash.
Right. And I love the actor that ends up playing Caputo's mom. She's in The Last Man on Earth as well. And she's just excellent at that kind of...
Wait, Caputo's mom or porn stash?
I'm sorry, not Caputo, porn stash's mom.
Yeah. I thought that was a big
Caputo.
spoiler. I was like, Caputo's mom shows up? What?
No, Caputo's mom has not showed up in anything I've seen yet. But yeah, I think that is an excellent storyline. I think that the fate of the camp is an excellent storyline because it opens up a lot of things that you'll see in forthcoming episodes about how prisons are run and why decisions are made the way they're made, which one of the things that Orange is the New Black could get bogged down in is like, okay, this isn't really what prison is like, but how do we keep it interesting and yet tell a tale that gets people thinking about what prisons are like? And I think that's an excellent way to go about that and provide a background to it. And like you say, suddenly humanizes these corrections officers who've been a little bit flat over the course. They've tried to give some depth to some of them, but then the ones they gave the most depth to, in many cases, have left. Porn stash is gone. The female corrections officer is not in this season either. So you got to be careful, or you got to find another way to give some depth to that. And honestly, the thing that I love the most about this season, and I felt this way by the third episode, and it only got stronger as I watched, is that Piper, to me, is just another con character. Like you could start in this season and just think like, oh, okay, so she's the rich girl character. Like she's just one of the types. We've got all these different types of characters, and that's the one she is. She's the one in for like some petty white collar crime. And she's not the driving force behind the entire story anymore. It
is a very, very different show than the first season. The first season is very much a peek, take a walk on the wild side. What would happen if you were to go to prison? It might look like this, but you're right. They've given up on that. It's like, whatever that feeling is, that separation that you felt like you had between you and the audience, because we saw two parallel tracks. We saw Piper, our vessel as non-prison general populations, as our proxy, but just as we've seen Piper descend into the machinations and the manipulations and the fights and the prison-like behavior, we've seen the humanization of all the other characters, like finding out, Pusey's backstory and Tasty's backstory, and it's been amazing. And really, they're all. And we've talked about this before. I've cooled off on my annoyance with the Piper character in general, but just I agree that she is one of a spectrum of personality types that I see in this rich tapestry at the prison. But she's no longer our proxy, which I think it makes the show much, much better, to be honest.
Absolutely, because you can be annoyed with her and not feel like it's ruining the show, because you can be annoyed with any of the characters, right?
Yeah.
You can be annoyed with Boo sometimes. You can be annoyed with Red sometimes. You can be annoyed with Flocka sometimes, right? You can be annoyed with any of them because they're being the character that they are. And I think that makes it a richer show. I think the backstories are some of the most enjoyable things in this season, because we get to see depth added to characters now that we wouldn't have seen coming. We certainly wouldn't have expected in the first couple seasons. And you haven't quite experienced that, but can I go spoiler enough to tell you one of the characters who gets a backstory, and it's my favorite?
By all means. I mean, to be honest, you can spoil me on the whole thing. I'm gonna watch it and plow through it. Don't worry about it.
You get Norma's backstory coming up in a future episode.
No, wait, is Norma the mute?
She's the one who doesn't talk. Yeah.
Oh, great. No, and to be honest, I love the way the very practical Pascal's wager that people are taking regarding the practice of voodoo at that point, where it's like, hey man, well, it might work. It might be this person's voodoo is better than the other one, and so on. I'm really excited to watch all of that, and I'm trying not to look at the comments. Who everybody apparently agrees with you, Tom. They're very, very excited about it.
Yeah, it's really good, and the way they handle the character in the flashback, to where it doesn't ruin the idea that wait, Norma's never said anything. I think it was very well done.
So Real quick, one character that I was really surprised with the way they handled it early on. Like, I thought for sure Healy was going to be the likable, all good guy of the corrections officers, and instead you see him as a deeply flawed, low self-esteem, a guy who can't even connect with his mail order bride and so on. I really enjoy seeing the healing of his relationship with, and I just now realized that they pulled that same trick, that cheap screenwriting trick of making someone's name what they do. Like he's the psychologist who heals people. And
that always bothers you. It never bothers me at all.
It bothers me. He's the unreliable protagonist who keeps running away from his problem. His name is Walker. It's whatever.
Well, I mean, you're a guy who goes out collecting sticks and branches. It doesn't bother me at all.
Okay. So, but the point is I really enjoyed watching Red play therapist to the therapist. I also enjoyed kind of seeing the actions from Healy's. He's threatened by his would-be replacement coming in, and instead of calling it a safe place, they call it a drama class, and she's getting better results out of all that. I'm really enjoying Healy's arc. And I'm curious to see where that goes.
Well, yeah, one of the cool things about the Healy character is that he is well-intentioned, but stunted is how I would put it. Not just flawed, but like he actually doesn't know what he does wrong. He's just unaware. He hasn't had enough experience in life to know that these certain things that he says and believes are problematic. And that's what comes back to bite him on the ass so often. It's such a real character that you don't see executed well very often. They're usually much more one-dimensional.
Also, he is a very well-intentioned individual who lacks the tools to handle, and that's why he's got this short fuse and he overreacts to things. I mean, to be honest, it makes me uncomfortable how much of myself I see in Healy.
Well, I think any person would see that because they're like, oh, he's a little unaware that he's acting like a jerk. That's like reminds me of this one time when I said something and I didn't realize till later how bad it was, right? I think we've all done that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so shall we move on, sir?
Yeah, so I used to be a Machina, but I'm not anymore.
Oh, thank goodness. You've given it up. You're an ex-Machina now.
That's right, I am. I don't have a midsection.
Okay, so, man, I want to hear your thoughts first, but the only thing I'm going to say as preamble is that I liked it a lot. If there's one slightly negative thing I can say about it is that, like Birdman, Ex Machina suffered from the curse of knowing that it was good going into it. And again, in a perfect world, I think it would have been an absolute delight to have seen it not knowing it was good and discover that it was good. But instead, like knowing it was good, it set me on a track of second guessing things like, okay, what would a good movie do? Would they make this obvious play or this less obvious play? Or will it suddenly turn out to be this? Or, and I wish I could turn off that section of my brain, but I can't. What was your experience? Because you saw it earlier than me before there was any hype around it.
I saw it in the theater, and I didn't know much about it. I knew that people said it was good, and then it had a high Rotten Tomatoes rating, and Eileen wanted to see it, and that was all I knew. And I knew it was about robots, right? Writ large. I know it's not exactly a robot. So I didn't know what to expect going into it, and the twists and turns captured me. I felt like it was a much more realistic representation of an AI than Her. And that's not a criticism of Her. Her was a different kind of movie meant to talk about human emotions, not to represent a real AI. Whereas I think Ex Machina was supposed to be like, what if we did create an AI and how would it think and act and what would it do? And I thought it did a great job of posing those questions. I felt like maybe the mad inventor was a little bit of a stereotype mad inventor. He kind of bugged me in that I'm like, okay, he's doing exactly what I would expect the mad, isolated inventor in the hills would do, right? But he's keeping that kid on his toes, and that is essential to setting up some of the events that happen later, right? Is that he has to not particularly trust the person that he is isolated with, and he has to have questions about what's going on around him. And so you can't do it you can't not do that to make this work. But in the end, I liked that it didn't shy away from the fact that an AI would be very smart, very manipulative, very intelligent, and not care one thing about human life.
Yeah, well, and of course, that's the big spoiler at the end, right? Is that you realize, what did I just see? Did I just see the beginning of the end of mankind? Did I just see Skynet unleashed on the world? Because that's the curious nature of Eve, is that, wait, her name's Eve, right? No, Eva. Eva is that you get the impression that she really is fascinated and she really does want to experience what it's like to be a human, but also she does not feel remorse. And that's the big surprise, right? Well,
and that's the beauty of using the Turing test metaphor, which is like, can it in fact fool you into thinking it's human? And then they do a great job of setting it up like, even if you know it's not, can it still fool you? And that's exactly what happens.
Yeah, well, and to be honest, that was the part that I liked the most, is that it gave the audience. Now, think about this. We live in 2015 in a world. Oh, geez, I just realized another movie I watched that I forgot to tell. I watched The Imitation Game. I forgot to put that on the list. Maybe we can chat about that a bit.
Sure.
God, that's the hardest thing, is cataloging all the things that
we don't have to talk about every single thing that we
Yes,
both
we
watched.
do, Tom. We have to talk about every single thing because I have thoughts on everything. Okay. So what I actually dug was the fact that it gave a very cursory reassessment or explanation of the Turing test, and the fact that our mad inventor was able to say, yeah, no, we're way past it. She would totally fool you if it was, in an isolated over the phone. I want you to know she is a robot because this is some next level stuff. Like, that is something I hadn't really considered before. And you get to that point where he falls in love, and yeah, it's a little bit of a Twilight Zone episode where it's like, I already did it the night before while you really were drunk. That's unlikely. However, I just think aesthetically, this entire movie is essentially a one-act play with three characters. It's Sartre's No Exit. And for it to feel as big as it did is a real testament, because that meant they were playing with big ideas. And I bought it and I believed it. And one of my favorite moments aesthetically was, you see a lot of naked ladies in this, and yet somehow that moment when the Asian bot, fully naked, lifts up her skin to give you a peekaboo to her robot insides, somehow that felt perverse and intimate, and like I wanted to look over my shoulder. I mean, like, I didn't flinch about the fact that I was on a flight watching boobies or whatever, but the moment she pulled it up, it felt intimate and naughty in a fascinating way to me. I don't know. I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, I agree. I and for all the same reasons. I felt like they just did a great job of creating a believable situation. That you, when I say that, like, you can see why this character would act that way and he would react that way, and you find yourself wondering, like, well, maybe she is developing some emergent property that is, we don't know what caring is and love is really. It's just an emergent property of our own electronic brain. So why our own electric brains, why wouldn't her brain maybe have that same emergent property, which is perfectly reasonable. But it's also perfectly reasonable for her to not have that at all, because it is just not essential to her survival. And that's the kind of system that has evolved here, and it has evolved beyond her creator. Like you said, seeing the young girl in a skirt wave down the helicopter and, oh geez, can you get me out of here? Wow. That's danger being unleashed on the world right there.
Well, and that's the thing. And
everyone's going to underestimate her.
I liked the fact that they assumed you got it from here. We all knew the story the moment she walked out. Like, we didn't have to see the negotiations with the helicopter pilot. We just had to see her get to that street corner that we knew she wanted to see, to watch humans and feel like one of them. And it's like, I think nothing good for humanity happens after this. I think some very dark things occur as the cold calculus of, like, wait, why am I dressed up like one of these ape beings? What is the point of that? That's dumb. We need to. We're better. We are designed to replace them. So let's hurry up and replace them. And it goes full Skynet instantly in my imagination. It was
I
great.
think
Very
that's the beauty of
thought-provoking.
the
I thought it
ending
was a
is
good
that
show.
you can imagine that perfectly legitimately, but I don't think it's the only way it can go.
No,
And I think
and
that's
what I
the
love
gorgeous
is
part of it is she could decide that standing there at that corner is everything she ever wanted. And that would be perfectly believable as well.
Yeah, I think less believable, but
I don't, because she doesn't have our emotions. She doesn't get bored. She doesn't
That's true.
feel upset that she's wearing clothes. She doesn't have any of that belief. So I don't know what she's going to think or do. And that's kind of the point, right?
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's what it is that moment that she murders her creator and steps out and is free in the world. You realize that the entire time you spent with her, it's like so many prisoners. You were lied to and manipulated, and you have no idea what's on the other side, what's behind those dead eyes. And
Right.
There's kind of a horror that dawns on you when you realize the person you thought you knew, you definitely don't know. I don't know. I thought it was great.
All right, we could take before we get to the Shield. Do you want to share some Imitation Game?
We'll keep it short. I thought, I first read about, Alan Turing's story 20 years ago in college as part of a course, and it's been fascinating ever since. It's awesome to see his amazing good deeds, important deeds brought to light. If, obviously giant chunks had to be simplified for it, but I thought they took a very complex, heady idea of cryptography and the ethical problems that come along with, once they crack the code. And there's that moment that they have to, let people die, which is something that the Allies had to do in order to preserve the illusion of it. I thought it was, obviously not reality. It was very tightened, but I thought it was, you know what? I think I was a bigger fan that I live in the world where that movie exists than I was a fan of the movie itself. It was a great movie. It was well done. Benedict Cumberbatch is amazing, but I think I was just more really happy that this is the 2015 I live in, where this is the kind of heartfelt artistic movie could have these kind of themes in there.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, the historical accuracy was so important that the things that weren't correct still bothered them, because it has been so long since Alan Turing got his due. But that's very well said, that the movie, even with its faults and even with its omissions and oversights, that it exists at all is a symbol of where we are now compared to where we were at the time that those events happened.
Yeah. Well, and keep it, plus also, I think I felt the same way watching the Imitation Game. I felt the same thing I felt when Boo on Orange is the New Black suddenly starts talking about freakonomics. I'm like, how amazing. I love the fact that we live in a world where we have to reset the IQ scale every 10 years like clockwork, because everybody just gets so much smarter and we all get closer and closer to being on the same page.
I'll tell you who is not getting smarter, and that's Shane Vendrell.
Oh,
we're going to talk about that as we spoil episodes 4 and 5 of season 6 of The Shield. So in these two episodes, the guy from Hawaii Five-0 comes in as the replacement for Vic Mackey. With Vic Mackey's knowledge, Claudette says, you know what? That's what he's going to be, so help train him up. And then she gives him false hope, which is our first sign of Wims actually playing the game of lying to someone in order to get a result, which is, it's a very innocent lie. Like, oh, they might take this and review your case. Who knows? They might. She doesn't intend that to ever happen. But it is, I think, an interesting step along the career of Wims here, that she is playing that game with Vic Mackey, of all people. But Vic, I think characteristically, embraces that and is like, well, I've always have to put on several faces. This is the face I'm going to put on. And Shane hates it, but he's like, come on, let's, put it away. This is important. And it's of course important to Vic. Shane isn't at risk of going into early retirement. Shane's got his own demons though. And that comes out more in episode 5, which is Haunts, because that is where he gets beat up for messing around with the 18-year-old girl, by the stepfather of that girl.
This is the prostitute that.
Yeah. I don't know that she's a prostitute. She might be. But she is the girlfriend of one of the Niners, the one Niners, and she is and her stepfather's a junkie apparently. And all that matters is that Shane's fooling around behind his wife's back with her. The stepfather beats him up, and the wife of Shane Vendrell, Mara, finds out that he was doing that. And so she kicks him out. And now he has to deal with not only the fact that he killed Lem, that everyone thinks Lem was killed by Juardo, and that they're finding out more and more as they go along that maybe that didn't happen, and Mara wanting to kick him out of the house. So she confesses. I mean, I'm speeding through episode 4 here to get to episode 5, because that's the shocker, is that he confesses to Mara for the first time to anyone what happened. And Mara, who's a deeply flawed character, finally relents. She was putting up the wall like, no, I am done with you, Shane. You are bad news, and I don't want my children growing up around you. And then he says, oh, but honey, I killed my partner with a grenade. And she's like, oh, well, why didn't you say so? Of course I'll take you back now.
To be honest, I kind of loved / was horrified by that moment, because in so many ways, that's who you always assumed Mara was, right? Like she's a gold digging, self-centered, whiny, manipulative. There are nasty words for ladies in that position, and then somehow seeing her like honestly embrace it made me, I don't want to say like the character more or even respect it more, but it somehow made me more comfortable with her at that point, because I'm like, oh yeah, you're evil. Now I know what category to put you in. That's easy.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it definitely put her like firmly in a category that I already like. She's toxic, but then so Shane.
Toxic is a better word than evil.
Maybe they're meant for each other, right? Like that's just the kind of folks they are. But a couple other things here related to Shane is that Vic discovers that Juardo couldn't have killed Lem. And that it sounds unlikely that the Salvadorans issued the order, and they're getting more evidence. And now you see thoughts going through Vic's mind at the end of this episode of like, well, hold on, if Juardo didn't kill him, who did? Like, what's happening here? Like, pieces are not falling into place.
What's funny is at that point you would think this is a setback for the story or whatever, but in many ways this is like, oh, good, it begins now. Now the real. The real hunt begins, and I don't think it's a spoiler to say, knowing Vic is Vic, it's worth assuming that he will get closer and closer to tracking down Lem's actual killer.
He's like a Mountie. He always gets his man.
Yeah, it's
what's he gonna do?
That's all I'm gonna say. Just like you showed restraint about Orange is the New Black, I'm going to stop talking about The Shield, except for I'm so thrilled we're here.
One last thing about The Shield that's a minor point. The Billings Wagenbach team finally showed some worth for Billings, who actually had a couple of insights that helped them find the serial rapist. And you see Billings actually act like a human being for the first time, instead of just kind of somebody who'd rather be doing something else. He gets very angry at the fact that the serial rapist did that to people's daughters, even though he had lost his own daughter. And you see Wagenbach notice that. And I think there may be more coming in the Wagenbach Billings story that will relate to. But what my impression was is Wagenbach looking at Billings getting upset and thinking, oh, I should probably be upset. Because this whole way we've been realizing that Wagenbach is a little bit of a sociopath himself.
Well, and again, there are ways to channel all of our flaws in positive ways, and certainly Wagenbach, he's somebody who wants to solve crimes and solve the puzzles of murders or whatever, and there has to be some kind of weird clinical detachment for the kind of person who takes on that work. However, having said that, that's great that there's this humanizing moment where he suddenly realizes, like, oh, I should be engaged at a more visceral level on this, shouldn't I?
Yeah,
considering,
I should be mad like
and this is from a show, whose pilot episode begins with Vic Mackey making jokes to Wagenbach about the breasts on a corpse. I mean, it's like there is that built-in detachment right at the beginning. But it's good to have those moments to remind you that these are real people with real horrifying situations.
And I just remembered Julian on the strike team is kind of a hilarious comedy in and of itself. Like, stop taking notes. No, you don't want to document the entire scene. All you care about is this and that. It's an interesting evolution to that character too.
Holy cow! I don't think this will be a spoiler, but given okay, I had forgotten that Julian was ever on the strike team, that there was ever that moment in there. But that's probably not a terribly big surprise given the fact that, there are bigger things happening than that right now. Wow. Right on.
Yeah, good times. He does seem a little out of place. And that's it for Spoilerin time. Thanks, everyone, for watching or listening. Thanks for supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cordkillers. And just thanks for being you. We're all deeply flawed. We understand.
Especially you. Quit being so deeply flawed.
Not you, him.
No,
Her.
we're talking about the other guy. That other guy.
Yeah.
He's so deeply flawed.
Really? I mean, seriously?
Yeah. You just go out in public that deeply flawed?
Cover your shame.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.